Oh, jumping Jesus. I didn't see you there, folks. You scared me. Welcome back. Today, we got one of our favorites, Professor Guy McPherson. How you doing today?
Practically perfect in every way, to quote Mary Poppins again.
So we were just talking about your studying time, and we're going to talk about other stuff going along with what's going on in universities now. But so when you were in university, you decided to quit. What year was it, and why?
Okay, first of all, I started on May 1st, 1989, because May 1st is the day we celebrate workers throughout the world, everywhere except in the United States. And so I insisted upon starting a month before they wanted to hire me, May 1st. And then I quit on May 1st, 2009, 20 years later. I did that because the university system and the college system, it's all about the money. You're deemed successful if you generate a bunch of grant money. If you have money flowing through the university system, then you're a success. Otherwise, I mean, it has very little to do with what I thought it was about when I got into the gig, which is teaching, right? Yeah. Teaching people how to be critical thinkers and not believe everything they read on the internet. The internet didn't even exist yet when I started. So I was just very disappointed with the whole affair. And I was incredibly successful. You know, fewer than 1 in 200 people who get a Ph.D. in the natural sciences go on to be a full professor. I did it before I turned 40. It basically never happens. And so I was stunningly successful, but I couldn't take it anymore. So I built $1 million homestead, actually a $2 million homestead, and moved off grid for a short time. And then I learned things. Learning things is always difficult. Generally, it's difficult as you're learning them, but sometimes they're difficult after you learn them. And so I learned about the aerosol masking effect. I learned about something that had never been published at that point, which is when nuclear power plants melt down, they strip away stratospheric ozone and cause the planet to superheat. Now, it's interesting that I discovered this only after leaving because peer-reviewed papers hadn't covered the topic yet. And then the 2021 film Finch displayed it. Have you seen that?
Oh, right. Yeah, it's a Tom Hanks flick, right?
Yeah. And every time they went out of the shade, they sunburnt immediately, like in a matter of seconds. Actually,
holy shit!
Just a little artistic license there. That's what they were doing. The stratospheric ozone had been stripped away, and so there's nothing to protect the planet from being superheated.
Is this a bit like on the moon, where if you're in the sun, you're roasting, and if you're in the darkness, you freeze to death?
Right. Very inconvenient.
Yeah, not the most fun way to spend your vacation. So what happened with this aerosol masking effect? Are people starting to get informed about this? Are we having more peer-reviewed stuff on this?
Well, it's interesting. Peer-reviewed papers go back to 1929. 1929 is just the best kept secret in climate science. Nobody ever talks about it. No paid climate scientist ever mentions it, as nearly as I can tell. Well, I've heard James Hansen mention it a couple of times. And that's about it. So yeah, I call it the best kept secret in climate science. He calls it our Faustian bargain because it indicates, well, as most of us know, we increase industrial activity that causes increased heating of the planet because it generates more greenhouse gases. But if you decrease industrial activity, that causes an even more rapid warming of the planet. And so Hansen calls it our Faustian bargain because it's a no-win situation.
Even if we stop?
Oh, if we stop, it's worse.
Wow.
If we stop, not only do the nuclear power plants melt down, because you got to pay attention to those, and it takes decades to safely decommission one. Yeah. And also, according to James E. Hansen, the aerosols fall out of the atmosphere in about 5 days. He has mentioned this many times in presentations and interviews. 5 days. So that's a pretty short period of time. And this was documented during the pandemic regionally, but never globally, fortunately. Starting in the area in China, where the pandemic first broke out, industrial activity decreased and it got hotter, much hotter. And then the same thing happened in Western Europe during the pandemic, and then in the northeastern United States. And so, fortunately, it didn't happen globally, or we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Now, they're talking about trying to put something also in the atmosphere to reflect the sun. Is that part of the same kind of mechanism?
Yes. It's a means of reducing our industrial activity while also acknowledging that doing so will cause abrupt heating. So there's several strategies to try to accomplish this. The one that I've been a fan of for quite a long time, since Dr. Ye Tao first came up with the idea, is using mirrors on the planet, either in the ocean or in terrestrial surfaces. And that way, before the sunlight strikes the ground and therefore can warm up the planet and have the greenhouse gases trap the warming planet, this would reflect the incoming sunlight before it hits the ground, before it can warm the planet. And so that's called the Mirror Reflection Project, and you can find it at meer.org, I believe. And it's Mirrors for Earth's Energy Rebalancing. That's what the MEER stands for. Mirrors for Earth's Energy Rebalancing. And the goal there is to build a bunch of mirrors. And initially, I was a huge fan of the idea because the calculations indicated that an area the size of the Netherlands would be required to have mirrors on them. And that would stop the heating right where we are right now. The more recent calculations show that the mirrors will need to cover an area the size of the United States. That's a lot. There isn't enough sand in the world for that. And sand we generally think of it as being readily available, and that's what's used to make mirrors and glass. But even sand is limited at this point.
Yeah. I mean, so that's a huge, I mean, you got some deserts in the world, but there's the size of the United States that's a huge piece of land. Yes.
That's a lot of mirrors. That's a lot of sand. And right now, many beaches in the world are dominated not by sand, but by plastic.
Yep.
Little grains of plastic that have been broken up by the ocean and washed ashore. And so...
Isn't it great?
An enormous proportion of the beaches in the world don't have sand on them to speak of. They're plastic beaches.
Are we just going to become a new paradigm of just plastic people with plastic everything molecularly is just everything's got a bit of plastic in it?
When did... Oh, I can't remember the name of the film. Dustin Hoffman. Hoffman. He has an older gentleman talking to, and this is when he was very young. This is like early 70s. And he's talking to this older gentleman, and the gentleman comes up and he says, plastics.
Oh, that's Rain Man.
No, it was before that.
Are you sure? Okay.
I'm pretty sure. And
no, it's The Graduate. Yeah.
Yes, that's right. It's The Graduate. What is that, 1970, 71, 73, something like that?
So I think it's something so around there. Yeah. Let us know in the...
Dustin Hoffman was very young in that film, right? And this guy comes up in plastics, and Dustin Hoffman is looking at him like, what are you talking about? He said, plastics, son, it's the future. Yeah, it certainly was. He saw
It
that
certainly
one
is. Yeah. And now we can't get rid of them. Now they're pervasive in everything. And you can't even manufacture anything without having that have a possibility. So what have you heard most recently about the microplastics? How bad is it?
Well, we each consume a credit card's worth of plastic once a week, I think it is. Once a week. Because we're eating.
What is it? It must be the food packaging, right?
It's everything. It's in everything. It's in everything. I mean, seriously, I suppose you could peel a banana. There wouldn't be microplastics on the inside. Probably.
Maybe not. Well, the question is, can plants suck it up through their roots? Because heavy metals can actually go from the soil into the plant, and then you can end up eating lead or something like this. So I wonder if microplastics can find their way into your...
I think they can only find their way into our bodies if we breathe or eat or drink. That's it.
Oh, that's it. That's the only things. Okay. Well, I'll just stop doing those things, and hopefully I'll be all right. I would say I'll go to Antarctica, but they're actually finding it down there too.
It's everywhere. The human impact is astonishing. It really is.
So how come we can't stop it? I don't understand. Like, we know it's bad. We know it's a huge deal. And yet, scientists are saying, oh, this is a big problem. It's everywhere. It's killing all this stuff. But yet we keep making it. Why? What's wrong with us?
Money.
Is that
money
it?
is wrong with us. There's money in plastics.
Okay. Oh, yeah. That's what
it would cost an enormous amount of money to get rid of plastics. Are you kidding me? It's in everything. Single-use plastics alone are used to package almost everything you can buy.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. I don't know if it's even possible to get rid of it. At some point, if it's that right.
Yeah, if it's that small and if it's already that far gone where it's in the stratosphere and it's on Mount Everest and it's in grandma's cupcakes, then it's pervasive enough where we're just not going to be able to come up with a regulation that comes up and sweeps it all up. And they're telling me now, if you want to get rid of microplastics, you have to boil your water. Oh, just boil your water and it'll be okay. It's like, I'm not going to boil every fucking pot of water I drink for the rest of my life.
Think of the energy of that. Right?
Yeah, that too.
You're generating fossil fuels by boiling the water so that you can survive for another 2 days.
Yeah.
What?
Like Guy McPherson would tell you, you're trading one for the other, so you're doomed. Humanity is a heat engine, no matter how you... The air conditioning too, right? This idea that the world will get hotter, but that's okay because we'll just use our air conditioners more.
Right.
Won't that make it hotter?
Yes, absolutely.
You ever walked by the outside of somebody's house who has the air conditioner on?
Hey, I lived in Tucson, Arizona. Arizona for 20 years. Are you kidding me? It's warm.
What a crazy place. Yeah. I wouldn't. I don't think.
Lived there for 20 years in a relatively small house on a relatively small lot. And one time, my electric bill, we had electric everything. Right? No propane, no anything else, just electric everything. And 1 month, the electric bill was more than $100 in the summertime.
Interesting.
And, we just lived in an inexpensive stick and stucco house that had a heat pump, and still.
Well, you're not heating too much in the winter, though, right?
Oh, no, that's right. No,
but that's helpful.
Still, you would think. I mean, in this house, it costs $400 or $500 a month, and we live in Vermont, and that's every month. Warming, cooling, whatever we do, it's really expensive. But in Tucson, Arizona, southern Arizona, where it gets a tad warm, 1 month we had $100 electric bill. Yeah. That's incredible.
Well, I mean, have times changed as well? I mean, they're putting us through the ringer with all this inflation junk.
Well, yes, that's certainly true. $100 then would go quite a ways today.
God almighty. I remember the bubblegum machines, you could put a penny in there and you can get a little gumball. Now we sound like old people. Oh, man. I remember when a steak and kidney pie cost a nickel.
Speaking of old people, I want to bring up something.
Oh, yeah, talk it to me.
Maybe this isn't the right time, but at some point I want to transition into what's happening on college campuses.
Yeah, God almighty.
Campuses. And, 54 years and a few days ago, the Kent State Massacre happened. That was on May 4th, 1970. May 4th, 1970. And 4 people were killed. 4 unarmed people were killed. Students, 19 and 20-year-olds. 9 more were injured, one of them paralyzed for life. And they were all unarmed. This all happened because the National Guard showed up, and the college students were protesting the use of the National Guard on campus and protesting the draft and protesting the expansion of the Vietnam War into Cambodia. And this was all the rage in the late 60s, early 1970s on college campuses. This is what people did, was they peacefully protested. And the National Guard shows up and fires 67 rounds in 13 seconds.
Jesus.
And kills 4 people and injures 9 more. That's unbelievable. And it's the same kind of thing is happening today. The same kinds of things are happening today on college campuses. And I'd like to say I can't believe it, but I was 10 years old in 1970. I remember that happening.
Yeah. Neil Young, 4 dead in Ohio. Is the thing of a generation. And right now I'm listening to nothing but music from that era because it's the only thing. And the sad part is corporate America has hijacked our music to where we don't even have the good protest songs and the storytelling behind the music, like Gimme Shelter by the Rolling Stones or something, songs that really explained what's happening, And
And a part of that is there's not very many musicians that are in their 80s who remember those times in the late 60s and early 70s.
That's true.
It's only the Rolling Stones, right?
And they're corporate as hell now. So the people of a new generation, there's no more rock music. It's all hip hop, which is very capitalist oriented, about money and luxury goods and stuff like that. We need a revolution of music again to come along and remind us of this shit, because my first love was music, and it taught me to not trust authority and stuff. And then learning about the 60s, it was totally clear.
I fight authority. Authority always wins.
Yeah, isn't that the truth?
And Cougar Mellencamp song.
Yeah. I fought the law and the law won. That's I sang that. I got arrested.
Every song we lose.
Yeah. It's true. Some honesty in there. I got caught growing weed one time, and I fought the law and the law won. And then in Germany, when you get caught growing weed, last year it was illegal, but if you can actually, it's legal this year. So I'm still in trouble for something that's technically now legal. So isn't that dandy?
Where's this?
I'm in Germany.
Oh, did I know that?
Yeah, I thought so. I keep thinking that you live in Oregon, so it's fine. But now I remember you live in Vermont. He's up in a cabin in the woods, like the Unabomber. I don't know. Shout out to Uncle Ted. Rest in peace.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. These young kids are going crazy about all kinds of stuff. But there is a big trend where Ted Kaczynski's also coming back, because people finally understand what he was talking about, and that he was very nature oriented, and he's basically, a lot of these young kids are showing us, like, see, Uncle Ted told you so.
Interestingly, the publisher of his book sent me a free copy. And it was...
You might like this.
It's good. It's really good. Yeah. I mean, he doesn't know about the aerosol masking effect, which is no big surprise. But he's basically a product of the late 60s, early 70s, the American Cultural Revolution. He wants to get out there and protest. And yeah, okay, so he did a couple of things wrong, right?
Sure.
I'm not a fan of killing people, but he had some great ideas with respect to how to get the attention of the masses and then do something that makes a difference for people.
Absolutely. Wasn't that incredible too? And they sort of twisted the narrative around, but ultimately his manifesto, it slipped down, and by now it's been what, 3 decades since he was doing his thing. People are starting to say, let's learn about this guy. What was he saying exactly? And Harvard educated, came out, 168 IQ, which is higher than Elon Musk, by the way. Yeah.
I thought isn't he in the negative numbers?
I think it's double digit, something like 60, 70 something. There's these celebrities too. I think they just tell their PR people to like, oh, just say that I have the Kardashians have 170 IQ. Yeah, come on. Nobody believes that. I swear I think there's a concerted effort for celebrities to go out and say, I tell everybody that I have this high, like Kanye West does not have a high IQ, but he's like, I'm the smartest motherfucker on earth. I'm like, all right. You don't talk like it. I'm just saying. But yeah, there used to be a thing where the smartest people in your society used to govern it, right? Like there was some idea at some point where somebody thought, why don't we have like scientists and like the smartest people? And I always liked that. Did you ever hear about that?
No.
It was some movement. It may be in the 20th century where people thought the best way to govern society is to have the absolute smartest people, your rocket scientists and your, everybody educated, college educated. But in America, you see the exact opposite. It's like people that just got their GED or whatever.
Or not.
Yeah. But no, and going back to the protests and shit, what's happening in Gaza and everything. I just saw one of our politicians. I don't know if you follow this, but it's the guy that got his legs blown off in Iraq or Afghanistan or something. This veteran guy, he's a total piece of shit. Like he's got these fake legs as he walks around, and somebody's asking him, "Why are you letting them kill so many people in Palestine?" And he's like, well, we're going to kill even more because they're all terrorists. And he's like, we're going to blow up their infrastructure. We're just going to destroy them. It's like the most genocidal shit I've ever heard in my life. From this bald-ass veteran. I'm getting a little salty, but it's true. I mean, what am I supposed to do?
This is crazy.
Unbelievable.
And yet it's everywhere now.
Yeah.
I mean, the anti-authoritarian people are just getting smashed. They're getting ground down.
Yeah. Didn't we, I mean, you lived through that time. Didn't we eventually also get smashed after Kent State was a huge turning point where it was obvious that we couldn't win. Hippies, we didn't have all the love to beat them.
Right. Yeah. Well, the federal government of this country had a lot to do with that.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine how many Black Panthers were killed by the CIA and people working for the big banks in this country.
Yeah.
They just made sure that none of that stayed around for long and by any means necessary. They just got rid of those people.
The tyranny of the majority is whoever's in charge, their little group, they can snuff out all the minority groups so that they retain all power over their situation. And then you got Wounded Knee.
Right. And I'm not even sure it's the majority. It's the tyranny of the powerful. The majority of the people in this country, the overwhelming majority of the people in this country did not want us to go into Iraq either time. And yet we did. We invaded like we owned the place.
Yeah. And we're seeing it again. A non-democratic country that we live in. People say we don't want, 80% of the people say Joe Biden is messing up this this whole thing. Like, nobody approves of what he's doing. He has like a 20% approval rating. Liberals now hate him. Republicans definitely hate him. And yet we don't get any say into where our tax money goes to like bomb some people somewhere for some vague reason, right?
Right. Made up on the spot.
Yeah. Well,
every president in my lifetime has been the worst president in my lifetime. Started with John F. Kennedy, rolling on through to Joe Biden, and people thought he couldn't be any worse than Trump. Want to bet? He's completely incoherent. He's unbelievably incompetent. He has no idea what he's doing. And if Trump is the next president, he'll be worse.
Yeah.
He was the worst of his time. Then Biden outdid him. Then Trump is going to outdo Biden round 2. Unbelievable.
On a sinking ship, it doesn't matter who's captain. It really doesn't. You just think, well, the captain's worse because the ship is more sunken than it was before, so this guy he's worse. But it's all bad. It's all bad. And Jimmy Carter, he tried. Look, he came in, he was like, I care about people, and I want to try to help some people. But then the economy tanked, and he had OPEC, and he had a good heart, I guess.
Not just that. Yes, he was the Marcus Aurelius of his time. He was the emperor at the wrong time. He realized, his administration realized that we were past the United States peak when it comes to oil. So he opened up the north slope of Alaska to drilling for oil. That was him. He continued the 55-mile-an-hour speed limit put into place by his predecessor, but that wasn't his idea either. So I'm certain that he knew things that we will never know. And he needed to hold the country together pretty much no matter what it took. And so if that means opening up the north slope of Alaska to drilling for oil, that's what we're going to do. The Alaska pipeline was one result of his administration. Yeah.
Well, why can't it ever be like consumption reduction? Because that's too authoritarian for people to be okay with. That we no matter what, we have to keep expanding, and business can never contract. So in order to save America, these presidents or whatever need to make these horrible decisions where each one of them turns out to be fucking war criminal, or, like Hitler did the same thing. They were like, we just had to do it. We know it was wrong, but we had to do it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the motto of this country is must go faster. And the subhead is must have more. That's what we do. That's what I learned my entire life.
Yeah. There's unquenchable thirst. It's an addictive personality, right?
Absolutely. Yes. That's what we do. We consume, and we're told that it's a good thing. Because it's about the economy, stupid. Right? That was the motto of Reagan's first term, I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Coined by one of his advisors. It's the economy, stupid. And that made sense when Jimmy Carter was in the midst of the economy being tanked. And so if you're going to win, you make it about the economy.
Yeah.
So they did.
Crazy. And it was funny at that very time, I think in 1980, did Reagan come in 1980?
Yes. He was elected in 1980. He came in 81.
The stock market since 1960 had declined up until it went through the 60s and 70s. It wasn't very strong returns. And then all of a sudden in 1980, all these new financial instruments and stock swindles were invented, junk bonds, all this shit started. And then all of a sudden the economy was booming. But, it didn't equal out for like normal people. Some people, upper middle class people, maybe they invested, maybe they made money. But ultimately, the wave of libertarian privatization that Reagan and Thatcher did, it just fucked a bunch of people.
Oh, yeah. Most of us.
Yeah. And definitely poor people.
Most people who got screwed have no idea that they got screwed.
Yeah. Why is that?
I don't know if you've heard me say this before, but it's pretty much my motto for life as I know it. And it's based on a book. I can never remember the title the title is Wizard's First Rule. and it's like a 700-page book, and it takes that many pages to explain that people are stupid. And so sometimes in this house, when somebody does something really stupid, we just say wizard's first rule because it saves a syllable compared to saying people are stupid. It's just one syllable less to say wizard's first rule.
And that is the wizard's first rule, is that people are stupid.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. That's a mantra that you chant when you just are at your end of trying to explain what's going on, or why would somebody do something like this, or this side, that side politics. It's just to say, well, who cares? You're all fucking doomed anyway. Wizard's first rule. Yeah, I feel that. I feel that every day. Well, that's why we get along so good, because we got the same bird's eye view of the situation. It's not good. I mean, they've got now a robotic dog. Check this out. You'll love this. Robotic dog that they send out to the woods for military purposes that has a flamethrower attached to it. So I don't know if I've heard of anything so sinister in my whole life. But a robotic dog that's out there to kill people with a blowtorch. So
I've been saying for years that if I had a blowtorch, I could solve a lot of problems. All I need is that dog.
Good boy. Good boy. Yeah.
Oh my.
Yeah. Well, that'll be the thing, is people will go out and military or whatever superpower. Everybody who's deemed redundant will be, barbecued.
It's these tools that are in the wrong hands. It's not the tools that are problematic. The dog is fine. It's the dog in the hands of the military, or the military industrial complex, which for the first many drafts of Dwight D. Eisenhower's final State of the Nation address, it wasn't the military industrial complex. It was the military industrial congressional complex. And his advisors made him take it out because it made Congress look like, well,
implicit
Congress.
Yeah. You're giving Congress a bad name. People who kill people.
Yeah.
I think
it's a bad name.
Yeah. Dude. And it gets, like you said, worse every year. The players, what do you say? The actors in the theater that is our political process, they seem to get dumber. Or maybe am I getting older, or are these people really highly ignorant and uneducated? Some of them, like the one lady from Colorado, her husband pulled his penis out at a movie theater, and the list goes on. Oh, dude, did you hear about the lady who shot her dog? Did you hear about this? No. Kristi Noem, the governor of South Dakota, wrote a book where she said, I had this dog and he couldn't be trained, and I hated this dog. And one day he attacked some chickens, so I took him home and I put him in the gravel pit. He was like less than 2 years old. He was a puppy. And she shot this dog, and then said she was feeling so empowered that she went and shot a goat too, because the goat was always mean to her kids. And then proceeds to, after everybody's like, whoa, what the fuck is wrong with you? And she's like, that has to happen sometimes on the farm. I just put down 3 horses last week. I'm like, what's wrong with this lady? And so she's alienated herself from both the left and the right, because everybody likes fucking dogs. You have to be a sick person not to love dogs, but you got to look this story up. It's just hilarious. It's so bad that it's funny. You know what I mean?
Well, it's interesting in South Dakota, because you know what the state motto is for South Dakota?
No, what's that?
At least we ain't North Dakota.
That's their claim to fame. Yeah. Well, I like how they set a high bar. That's really nice. Yeah, I couldn't believe that. Yeah. So we're getting people like this. So I stand with the college kids. I always have. I always stood with the protesters, even as a young kid, seeing what happened in the '60s. I said, "Well, power to the people." Makes sense to me.
When I was on campus, I was protesting with the students.
Really?
I was marching with them. It's one of the reasons my administration detested me so badly.
Yeah.
I mean, there were a lot of other reasons too.
Sure.
To be fair.
Well, you're a rebel. You play by your own rules. Everybody's going to hate that.
Well, morality, anybody?
Yeah. Ethics.
I mean, who's on the right side of history here? Look back to the late 60s, early 1970s. Vietnam? Are you kidding me? That turned out to be a complete disaster. Yeah. The environmental legislation. So there were three things that were basically being protested at the same time. It was the same group of people protesting the Vietnam War, protesting legislation about the environment, how it wasn't going far enough to protect the environment, and social justice. And the same thing. And we actually made some progress with respect to the latter two. Legislation was passed, the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act. There's a lot of great legislation that was passed in the late 1960s through the 1970s. And so progress was made. But it didn't solve all the problems, did it?
Hmm. Well, technology continues to create problems too. Then we had the problem with the ozone layer, and I think that didn't get solved till late 80s when did they pass that?
Well, it's pretty interesting. The Montreal Protocol was passed in 1976, and it took another generation after that before the ozone layer over Antarctica had stopped growing. So wow. That's success. Oh, and by the way, there are now holes in the ozone over the equator, over tropical forests that are bigger than the hole in the ozone over Antarctica. You never read about that anymore.
Wow.
That's just not on the news anymore, but it's still important. It's still out there, and it's affecting a much larger portion of the planet than it was back in the day.
I always thought about it like I would hope that if we do have a hole in the ozone, maybe some of that greenhouse gas would just kind of slip out and, open the chimney. And can we do something like that? Is that possible? Or
see the point? Go that way.
Yeah.
The greenhouse gases.
Yeah. Train it like a dog. Give it a biscuit. No, I don't know how it works, but I always thought, man, you just cut a hole in the ozone, push all that stuff through. Maybe that'll be, but it sounds like, from everything you've told me, every time we talk, no matter what, we're just buying a little bit of time. Do you see a lot of weather events going apeshit right now, too? I mean...
Oh, yeah, of course. And it's interesting because I don't watch YouTube. I try to avoid it at all costs, even though I use it because it's my only means of making money as a monetized YouTube channel. Right. So I use it, but I can't stand to watch anything on there. People send me links all the time to how things are getting better, which as nearly as I can tell means they're not getting worse every day. Anyway, so yes, good things are happening around the world. Are we keeping up with the bad things that are happening? It doesn't seem like it to me.
Yeah. Well, it seems like no matter, it's our nature. This is what you always say too. It's in our nature to continue to create problems for ourselves.
Right. Yeah. We all want the success stories that we all heard growing up, right? We all want to be wealthy. We want to be financially wealthy. We want to have lots of money. We want to have lots of friends. We want to have 2 cars and a boat and blah, blah, bullshit. And where does that go when there's more than 8 billion people trying to chase after the same thing? Obviously, it goes to consuming like there's no tomorrow, until finally we succeeded. We created a situation in which there's no tomorrow.
Yeah. We consume until we have conflict, and then we conflict until we're all dead. Seems about the long and tall of it. But yeah, I mean, there is like some news I keep hearing too, where people go, well, NASA says that there's more green spots than there were before. And apparently, I looked it up. Apparently, that's true.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't mean that there's not going to be more hurricanes to come and blow all that soil and trees down.
Right. Right. So I look for good news, and I find it frequently locally.
Hmm.
At the local level, sometimes at the regional level, people are doing good stuff. And they're getting recognized for it. That's awesome, because in the end, all we have is here and now. And so that local stuff should be more important to us than what's happening at the global level or even the societal level. And so that stuff matters. At least it matters to me. So I think it's important to hold on to that. Hold on to that kind of thing. Because there are good things happening.
Yeah. Well, I want to believe you. I really do. What in your neighborhood I know Vermont is famous for being more forward-minded with a lot of things. Can you get organic stuff? Is there a farmer's market? Is there non-corporate stores?
There's a great Saturday Night Live skit that if you search on YouTube, for example, for white supremacy Vermont, I'm sure it'll be the first thing that comes up.
I like it already.
It's funny. It's like a 3.5-minute skit, and these people they're all Southerners, right? And they're having their big meeting of white supremacists. And some guy says, we should go to Vermont for this. Somebody says, no, we're not going north. We need to stay here in the South. And he finally convinces them that there's these farmers markets all over the place, people helping each other hand in hand, working together. It's amazing. So he convinces them to go to Vermont for their next white supremacist meeting. Because we do have farmers markets in pretty much every town and village here. It's great.
Yeah, I love this. I always love that. I actually visited Vermont before, and I really enjoyed it. There's laws that say, is this true? You have to tell me if this is true. Is there a law in some of these towns that say you can't idle your car? You can't just sit and have your car on. Is that true?
I have no idea, but it wouldn't surprise me. Because all these towns and villages, and there are no cities in Vermont, it's just small. The people really have a say, which is amazing. There are town meetings that I've actually been to since moving here. I go to the town meetings and people talk about how we're going to fix that or tear down that or blah, blah, blah. And then they actually do it. It's not all big government, marking over everybody's shoulder and making sure only the wrong things get done.
What do you think? You have to rely on anything too foreign for the survival? Let's say, the apocalypse happens tomorrow. How well insulated is Vermont to being, self-sustaining? Could you make it?
No, absolutely not. For a couple of reasons. One, the aerosol masking effect. If there's a reduction in industrial activity, the planet superheats.
Right.
And got to safely decommission all those nuclear power plants.
Yeah, that's the one thing. And if they're unmanned for any period of time, let's say that everybody dies around Diablo Canyon and nobody's there to manually cool it or whatever they do, that it'll just explode.
Right. And all that ionizing radiation will strip away stratospheric ozone and superheat the planet. I mean, super fast. We're talking in a period of days, so fast that nobody could be outside. And do you really want to live like Mark Zuckerberg in a bunker?
Yeah.
I mean, that's not even living.
It's a sick thing to see it coming and not be able to do anything about it, and then just say, well, I'll just steal everything from everybody else. I'll steal all the wealth of the world, and I'll just build a bunker, and I'll survive. I mean, there's a lot of movies coming out that are so dystopian, like you just mentioned Finch, that it's already a given in this situation that it's all over.
Right.
We never had a chance.
I liked Finch more than Don't Look Up, but the final scene in Don't Look Up, which came out the same year as Finch, 2021, and the final scene in Don't Look Up was as good a scene as I've seen in any film anywhere. Right? They're all gathered around.
Spoiler alert, but yeah.
Right, they're all gathered around, family and friends, having their final dinner. And the signature line when somebody says, "We really did have everything, didn't we?"
Yeah.
That's the whole story right there. We really did have everything. We did.
Yeah. I thought you meant the very last scene where the billionaires actually make it to the planet that they're trying to go to, and then they get eaten by all these space creatures. I was like, I like that too.
Of course.
Yeah. I'm a bring back the guillotine for the rich kind of guy. Like,
absolutely.
That even if we are doomed and humanity is doomed, we should probably not let these guys try to get the edge over us. But as somebody, I forget who it was in the 20th century said, you can always pay one half. Some rich guy said, you can always pay one half of the people to kill the other half. I forget who said
it. That's not funny.
It's not. And because we were talking about protests, and when I see protests, that's all I can think about. It's like, oh, they're paying one half of the people to kill the other half.
Right. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Not a big fan of police. So when you were taking, when we were talking earlier about taking funding from when you were in university and like how they're all corrupt and they're all for money. Isn't it? I've interviewed a lot of academics. It seems like you can't be a success without corporate funding. Like you need to take the money from Satan himself in order to.
Right. I mean, there's the National Science Foundation. There's the USDA, United States Department of Agriculture. There are other sources of money besides corporate money. But of course, all that ultimately goes back to corporate funding because that comes out of your tax dollars. That's what funds the National Science Foundation and the United States Department of Agriculture and the United States Department of Interior. All the sources of money ultimately lead back to where the big money always is.
Wealthy people, wealthy interests, 1%ers, stuff like this.
Exactly.
I mean, you've seen it get worse, though, over time, I guess, in your day. I mean, knowing as early on as you did, you lived through the fucking Iraq war and shit. I mean, you were old enough to understand. I was in high school when it happened, but we went along with the war. What was it like for you to go see the Patriot Act and everything come into?
Oh, and to be posted in every classroom, the Constitution and the Pledge of Allegiance, I think those are the two, had to be posted in every classroom in the country. Are you kidding me? That's insane.
We need an emergency dose of patriotism stat. God almighty. Were you suspicious right away? Or, I mean, obviously you hear the terror attack and you say, oh, that's terrible. Terrible things happen. It's not good. But then pretty soon afterward, didn't you figure it out? Like, whoa.
I was trying to make a phone call. I hadn't, at that point, I hadn't really watched television since 1980. I didn't follow any pop culture, right? So I only learned things from the students in my classes. That's where I learned about everything that's going on in the world. And I'm trying to make a phone call to some attorney who's trying to hire me in Texas, and I can't get through, and I can't get through, and I can't get through. And finally, I call the operator. I hit 0, and she wouldn't answer my question. She says, watch the television. And I'm like, I'm not really much of a television person. She says, sir, watch the television. So I turn on the television, and it's 9/11.
Wow, what a way to find out.
Right.
I mean, you got to envy somebody who's got that you're that not, like your mood isn't dictated by the current events like most people. That you're just like, what? The world's on fire. Yes, turn on the TV.
Right. And so turning on the television, I found out that this thing was happening, right? Wow. That's how insulated I was being on a college campus.
Lucky guy. Lucky guy.
Absolutely.
What was the aftermath? I mean, obviously, what was the people talking around you about it? People worried?
It was all about the terrorists, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody bought the line that it was an attack by terrorists. And even though the buildings that came down violate the laws of thermodynamics without being purposely brought down from the inside, right?
Building number?
You can't hit it with a plane. These buildings were designed to withstand a plane hitting them and not falling over.
Yeah.
And yet, a plane hits one of them. Oh, and by the way, nothing hit one of them. Building 7?
Yeah, that's the one.
Exploded. Like, what is that?
Yeah.
And nobody asked a question. That was the part that struck me most and fastest, was nobody was asking anything. They're just going along with the God bless America bullshit.
Yeah. Wouldn't you say it's good practice when everybody's off looking at the plane crash or the whatever it is, house fire, or whatever you're distracted by, or looking at the circus, that you should probably be looking around at everything else to see exactly what the hell's going on. You know what the funny part about 9/11 is that I've recently discovered this year was after Osama bin Laden did this thing, he wrote a letter to America. And he talked about exactly why he did this. And the reason why he did it, main reason, was because of Israel and the way they treat Palestinians. Isn't that something? And the more I looked into it, look, I heard the conflict started. I said, okay, let me learn about it. Let me see. They always said, oh, those people, they always fight. Just the way it is. I learned about it. It's actually pretty one-sided. It's pretty bad.
Well, what do you know?
Well, who'd have thunk it? Who'd have thunk it? Who'd have thought our American propaganda would let us down and tell us mistruths?
You know another great song with a great video is John Mellencamp's Little Pink Houses.
Oh, we got a Mellencamp fan in the house. All right.
John Mellencamp, Little Pink Houses. The video is amazing. And he describes everything that is wrong with this country in a 3-minute song. It's incredible. I lived in a little pink house.
You did?
Yeah, almost the whole time I was in Tucson. I lived in a little pink house. Just exactly what he's singing about. How people get bought by the money. And they settle for little pink houses while the billionaires have everything.
Mm-hmm. There's a black man with a black cat living in a black neighborhood. He's got an interstate running through his front yard. You know, he thinks that he's got it so good. And then there's a woman.
Yep.
And then there's a woman in the kitchen cleaning up the evening slop. He looks at her and says, "Hey, darling, I can remember when you could stop a clock." Oh, man, that's a pretty good song.
Can you imagine saying that to the woman in your life and living to tell about it?
Right. I met an old.
I remember.
Yeah, I met an old Italian guy one time where he said, "My wife, she's old," and he would say that openly at the dinner table, and she would look over at him, give him the eye.
He wasn't old, of course. It was just her.
Yeah. I know that he's like older, and he's like, she's too old. Oh yeah, ain't that America?
Something to see.
Oh, I know the song. I thought it was called something different. Of course, there's a young man in a t-shirt listening to Rock and Roll Station. He's got greasy hair, greasy smile, and he says, "Lord, this must be my destination."
Yeah, he was told he could be president, but what do you know? It turns out not just anybody can become president of this country.
Yeah, well, the bar is getting lower all the time. You have to be at least 90 years old, first of all.
Right. But it's a great song because it points out that we all settled for so little while the billionaires took everything. And every time I see something ridiculous happening, which is, I still try to avoid the television, so I don't see it every day, but I see it far too frequently. And all I can think of is, ain't that America? Something to see.
Yeah. Well, as our favorite guru says, he says, in America, in the world, you got a ticket to the freak show. And if you're born in America, you get a front row seat. George Carlin.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the world we're living in. No, we do all right. Well, I like to have you come on because you make me feel better. We could commiserate over the whole shebang.
I was only 10 years old when Kent State happened. The next year, my paternal grandmother died. And I was 11 years old. And I didn't even know this person, right? We visited once every year or two. We lived a long way from where she lived. And so I didn't even know this person. And I cried for a long time. And looking back on that a year or so later, I wondered, why did I do that? I don't even know this person. I was 11 years old. I realized I was going to die too. That's when it first occurred to me, right? That I too am mortal. And then
when existential crisis, yeah.
Yes, exactly. And then when I'm 14 years old, Terry Jack's song comes out, Seasons in the Sun. Oh, that's a killer, man. It's a killer. It still makes me sad every time I hear it.
It's this idea that you understand the briefness of your life and the mortality of it all. I was about the same age. I had the same thing. I woke up in the middle of the night, came down the stairs out of a dead sleep, crying my eyes out, and I had to ask my mom, go find her and say, so what, we're all going to die?
I'm sure she appreciated that.
Yeah, she's like, yeah. And if you don't go back to bed, you're going to die tonight, sooner than later. Yeah. I mean, then since then, I thought, well, it's amazing that people treat each other the way they do, knowing the briefness of it all.
Right? Yes. Right. Yes. That fact alone, that we're all going to die and that our lives are unbelievably short. I mean, by any measure. When I was touring Western Europe in 2015, there was the world's oldest human being at the time had just turned 117. 117 years old.
Wow.
And she was asked to think about what happened during the first 117 years of her life. And she said, it seemed rather short. 117. It seemed rather short. And then she died a few weeks later just to put a punctuation mark on her message.
Wow. That's insane.
Yes. It seems rather short. I don't think any of us in our final moments is going to be going, that would lasted too long anyway. Jeez, I'm glad that's over.
Yeah.
Right?
And then they say it speeds up as you get older too. Everything sort of speeds up or whatever. So it feels like. But they asked this lady who just turned, I think, 100, or maybe older, really old lady. And they interviewed her for the news, like this real peppy young reporter's like, how you doing today? And she says, are you excited for your party? And she gives the microphone, not one bit. I always love that answer. She said, what's your secret to long life? She says, I don't know. I don't fight it. I just live it. She just gave the greatest answers. Like she didn't, you get to this age, I don't have any answers. It was just, it's gone in a flash.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, you watch a movie where the guy's whole life passes before his eyes or something, where it takes him from his birth all the way to he's an old man. That always gets me too. Like Castaway, like he, spends all his time, comes back, his wife's banging this other dude. It's a shame.
Have you seen the Xbox commercial?
No.
So there's a commercial for Xbox, and it's still on YouTube. I think it was banned for showing on television. And somebody comes out of the womb, gets blasted through the window of the hospital, flies through the air, ages 80 or 100 years, whatever it is, while they're flying through the air. And all in the span of a 30-second commercial. And then, bam, lands in a coffin.
Oh, wow.
And it hasn't said anything the whole commercial. And then all you can see is the baby screaming and then getting old and getting crinkled up and lands on the coffin, hits the coffin. And then it says, life is short, play hard. Because it's for one of these video game platforms. It's a great commercial. You got to look for it.
I'm actually watching it as we speak. He's flying through the air. His teeth are turning rotten. Over the fields, into the coffin. Why was it banned? Was it just too fucking dark for the majority of people?
I think so. It's pretty dark.
I'm a troublemaker. I think we should have stuff like this constantly put in our faces, you know?
Of course. We need to be reminded that our lives are short.
When I was in 8th grade, I went to a Lutheran middle school, and it was a rough time because I didn't fit in too good. But the field trip that they had planned for the religious part of the thing was to go to a mortuary, or like one of these. Is that what you call it? Where they clean up the bodies, and it's like this thing.
Yeah, and they stick them full of formaldehyde and.
Yeah, and the place smells funny, you know.
That's the place, yeah.
That's just put the fear of God into us. They're like, you're all kids, you're all gonna die. That's child abuse, man. But no, I appreciate reality, man. I don't want my reality watered down to make me feel better. I want the realness.
I grew up in a timber country, in timber country, big timber country. This was before they chopped down every tree. And so in 4th grade, everybody who went to school, where I went to school, in 4th grade, they went on the 4th grade forestry tour. So they could be further indoctrinated into believing that cutting down every last tree is a good idea. And so we went camping for a few nights. You 4th grade, what are you, 10 years old? 10 or 11 years old, something like that. So we're all out there camping, because that's what everybody in this village called Weep, Idaho did, right? They just went camping all the time. That's what I did all the time. I thought it was normal. And then now you're camping with a bunch of 4th graders. I can't even imagine being one of the chaperone parents involved in this thing. Have a bunch of, like 100 4th graders running around at your feet, screaming and giggling. Oh, I can't believe more of them didn't.
Hell on earth.
And we went to all these sawmills and saw somebody cut down a big tree, and cheered for the guy cutting down a tree that was so big that a bulldozer would have sat up on top of it. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. And this is what we're cheering for.
Yeah.
Ain't that America?
Ain't that America? Land of the free. I went on a walk today, and they're doing the same thing over here. And I can't be sure that they're not cutting down the right trees for the right reasons, but I saw a tree that was fucking yay big around. Obviously it's been around for 200 plus years, and it's just, that's not so nice. It's not a nice idea.
200 years is enough. It's had a good life. It's time for it to
down. Take him out back, put a bullet in him. He's done. Well, it's a shame, because I think some of that stuff, they need to clear the forest for whatever reason, but the other stuff, I'm pretty sure it's just. And the other thing is, I read The Life of Trees, The Secret Life of Trees, and they're talking about how you cut into a tree. He doesn't feel it necessarily, but he reacts on it. Now, it takes him a few years to react on it, but he'll say, ow, there is a reaction that they give. And the fact that they bleed sap is pretty creepy too. So, shit, man, can't we respect something, anything? Yeah. My wife was just telling me this story. Like, I have snails in the garden right now, and they're a huge pest. I scoop them up. I toss them over the bush. I get them out of my plants. But there's a lot of them, so it's getting bad. My wife's brother says, "Oh, I just find them. I take scissors and I just cut them in half." I'm like, Jesus Christ, what's wrong with you? Is it just me, or is that a little bloodlusty? Like,
that's what we do. That's what we do in this whole culture. We kill things. We kill things.
Shoot it.
And call it success.
Yeah. Shoot it. If it doesn't work, shoot it. Yeah. Like a gun is a tool that can turn on light switches and open your beer for you. Yeah. No, not so good. Well, look, we did our hour. Come back next week. We'll do it again. We've got plenty to talk about all the time.
Wait, you make it sound like we're doing time. We did our hour.
We did our hour. The torture is over. You made it. Congratulations. No, I actually frequently enjoy the meeting with you because otherwise I wouldn't have anybody to. My wife gets tired of me talking to her. You know, she's like, "Yeah, I heard it. I heard it all before, honey."
Wait, she still allows you to talk to her?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes. Only on weekends.
This is why I have an ex-wife. She got tired of me talking too.
Yeah. As they do, you know. So, well, I supplement it. I come out and I talk to other fine young men like you. We can. It feels good, doesn't it? It feels good to know that we're not alone. Exactly. I'm pulling my hair out every day.
To talk about reality. Reality is something that we're all supposed to be sort of attached to.
Yeah. And be conscious of that, its fragility, and say, well, if this is all there is, then maybe we should just do the cool thing, which is treat people and treat each other nice. Is that
right? Yes.
Is that your motto?
Absolutely. If our lives are short for all of us, and for many of us they're miserable, then alleviating somebody else's suffering is, I think, about as good as we can do. You know, that was Arthur Schopenhauer's definition of happiness: the alleviation of suffering. Now, you talk about somebody who set a low bar. To alleviate suffering for 5 seconds. That's his definition of happiness.
Yeah. Low bar. Well, it's good to set a low bar so that people can actually get over it, you know.
Right, exactly. Instead of tripping over it.
Yeah. Saying it's too high. I can't do it. Yeah.
Anyway, I really appreciate the opportunity to chat with you. This is great.
It's always great. Look, we'll do it again. We're going to make a thing out of it because everybody who's listening, you know, we had some good comments last time. I'm not going to say there's a few knuckleheads, but for the most part, people liked our energy. They say, "Oh, you guys are a good team together." And so, if we do it more often, we're gonna do that. You coming on my show, I'll come on your show. Call me anytime. I'm always down to chat. Think of new topics.
I don't have a show because of the things I read on other people's shows.
Yeah. You're beloved. I'll just say this from the comments I see, you're actually very beloved. So that's actually kind of nice to see.
I need to find somebody who will read the comments and tell me about the good ones.
I'll do that for you. Next time, I was scared to tell you because you sent me that fucking legal disclaimer. Like, I'll sue your ass if you. I'm like, oh shit, I don't want to mess with him. I can't afford a lawyer. But if you want me to, I'll comb through the good ones and I'll give us the best of the best. And in fact, everybody who makes a nice comment, guess what? I'll read it. I'll read your comment on the air next week. I'll say your prayer on the radio next week if you want. So be nice, be civilized. Otherwise, I'll just block your ass. You know, I can do that. I have the power. But no, we appreciate everybody who's watching and everything like that.
Yes, we do.
Well, let's sign off to all these monkeys out in TV land, and then we'll talk right after this.
All right.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for the opportunity to chat again. I appreciate it.